Fascination is beautifully hollow. Hello everyone. When we look at reality, there are certain moments that take our breath away, in the sense that we observe a continuation and an enhancement potentiality of our vision and immediate values, that we are interested in being more of a dynamic process as a result. So what I mean by a dynamic process, or let me at least say a dynamic state compared to a static state, and how I'm using these terms is actually that your static state is when you are thinking of thoughts, when you look at things, when you are just very less in flow. Static, less in flow, and less in aligned with an intuitive flow, okay? And dynamic means there's more allowance. So let us perceive that what is fascinated is actually a sense of I don't know in a certain progression. Because nothing fascinates you as much as a progression that is so vast in movement. I mean, that's fascinating. And so things that have never been done before will begin inspiring all the existence within their proximity. You simply becoming someone who is constantly coming with the newest ideas, and not ideas relevant to others, ideas relevant to you. You're coming up with newer views on the same ideas you've had. And so as you cultivate such a depth, you understand that your understanding was kept shaped by you. All the structures that are in your way are structured by your eyes. And so you need to see that the way you have structured them, there was an intent. So in other words, there was an intent for man to walk into a certain blindness. There was an intention of him going somewhere. And so he is not lost, but he has not recognized the intention of wanting to go where he wants. In other words, if we were the eyes in the sky, we would see that man is evolving, but he does not fully and clearly perceive how he's evolving. And because he is not sensitive to life, because he's looking at too many pictures and posts on his iPhone, there's a sense of existential forgetfulness where you'll see you can go do all these temporal things, but at the end of the day you feel, where is the value really? I mean, where is the value of your life really? Ask yourself this question and wonder. Fascination can work in different ways. One way of fascination is that you are totally oblivious to your internal sense by not considering it, because you're satisfied by external projections and movements. What that means is a lot of people don't think about life and death until they're confronted with it. Many people cry when loved ones die, and it's not that it's wrong. I mean, of course, it's natural to cry, and allowing yourself to cry and to release all the immediate reactions that are happening when someone leaves your life is very important as well. But what is more important is the direction you give yourself in how you want to acknowledge things. I used to acknowledge things where a party or a good time used to be the most interesting thing. The way I acknowledged my world, it seemed like the best option to go have a good time and enjoy life, something like that, you know. But then I noticed that I totally can go do that. You know, I have totally the ability to go and embed myself in a party lifestyle, in a routine lifestyle, and even slightly push that up to a satisfactory position where I have a good job and I have a good house and whatever. That is one method you can do it. But the thing is about methods is that you are giving yourself the methodology of use. And so in an instant your greater intentions can be revealed to you through the authenticity to let go of the lies, to let go of the illusion. You see, the illusion is kept there by you because it is what is here now. Do you recognize this? That means that if I go step in one room, I shouldn't be like, oh, I know this is in my room, you know? If I go into the wrong building and I know the right building's right beside it, do you know? It is by choice, no? That I'm stuck in that building, in the wrong building. It is your choice to accept without following the I don't knows of your life, which are fascinating. Never be afraid of I don't knows. When a deep I don't know hits you, something happens that you will see you have just reached a point of awareness within yourself where you can acknowledge more, where you know that your excitement is reminding you of something. And when it's reminding you, could this remembrance be beyond space and time? Could this remembrance be the origination of existence? Many have seen the spark in different ways of how conception has come. But for me, origin stories are interesting, but based on how much they serve me, based on my awareness. So Mr.Within's, let's say, simple principles to handling complex things in your life is that recognize that everything has its own way of being. So in other words, even your reflection in the mirror has its own way of being. And when you acknowledge existence, you begin seeing what kind of a sensitive being you are. The life that is within you can be taken away instantly. So how are you still arrogant to the hardships that others are going through? And at times we also have this view where we say, that's life. This is how the objective reality survives. But the greatest act of survival is to no longer require to survive in that way. Survival also means the survival of your consciousness, which at first will simply be where your attention is going to keep a reality. We are at an exciting time where many people are being born with certain fluctuations in how they are aware of things. And so the certain systems we have distract people into identifying with realities that are not really real. So in other words, sometimes you see that I recognized it after a certain amount of self-contemplation. I noticed the way I'm reacting to people is not really me, you know? And what I mean by that is that sometimes we respond to situations, but it is not our response. We have just seen someone do it somewhere else and we're just doing it, you know? Or and it's subconscious. It's not something that's immediately conscious, you know? In other words, think of being able to completely perceive everything that you have perceived so far to make a decision. And that is the power of the subconscious, let's say, or as people have called it, the subconscious. Fascination will lead to a certain hollowness, but the reason that hollowness is beautiful is because it is showing that you being hollow from one side does not mean you're hollow from the other side. In other words, if you're in if you're in a certain room and you observe that room, once you have looked at that sense of space and time very properly, once you have really looked at life to see what is there, there will be a sense of transparency in who you thought you were to be able to see who you are to be. In any act of awareness, we want to use the beauty and the natural flow of our wit, regardless of our thinking. There are certain states of being which I am communicating that things can just happen. Things can just happen. In other words, your energy no longer needs to be in trying to keep your attention with the slightest intent it occurs. It's a simplicity in your self-awareness. Because you're more attentive to self, all occurrences of self have become more instantaneous. And so the space-time continuum begins to be perceived from other cause points. In other words, once you see that the effect that we just judged it once and we said it was this, is actually caused from multiple sources, our understanding of cause and effect cannot remain the same, but only to dissolve into the greater intelligence that knowingly is the expression of it. So, one way of handling objective reality is to observe, why is it objective for you? Why do you feel this chair is here? And these are deep questions, but questions to very compassionately and gracefully and playfully look at, you know. These are simple things. Think of it, instead of reading something on the newspaper, you're just thinking about this idea. Because questions are great teachers. Because all teachers like people who ask questions, right? You will find yourself in different senses of observance, awareness, self-awareness, and being. These are all fine. Enjoy it and cultivate the intentions that communicate. What that means is if you sat down and you were aware of your meditative state, and you know, I don't really want to give a standard for this. Doesn't really have a standard because you're working for yourself. I mean, you can go act like somebody else, but if you don't really understand the value of those actions, you know, and if you can't see the value of those actions in your current actions, then, you know, there's no benefit that can be seen, actually. Because your sight needs to be clear. As I have said before, you know that moment where you're looking at a sign in the mall of how the outline of the mall is, and right when you're reading or trying to find the store, someone walks in front of you, you know? And so, you know that feeling of being blocked? Well, that can occur with certain ideas, certain things that occur. And if you are not mindful, in other words, if you bang the door very loudly without very gently closing it, so you keep that alignment, you would be walking a bit careless. And carelessness usually leads to confusion because you're not paying attention and you're not mindful of what you're doing. So appreciation and satisfaction, it's this deep sense of observance of the things that you're doing throughout the day. And you're not trying to observe. You're simply seeing that any form you perceive is present in the moment. You are the moment now. There is no preference. And that's simple. And you see that language is actually what is really, for now, affecting people. I look at this planet and I see that, okay, we've been a bit lazy, right? But it doesn't mean we don't have the potential. And what that means is that we see what's one of the most physical, high, or in a sense, let's say highest self-aware beings on this planet. It is man. It is mankind. I want you to see all animals, all physicality, as each being a beacon of keeping existence here. Everything you see around you is present as you are. And as you observe presence, you see that all emotions of incapability, negativity, guilt, suffering, a lot of pain and past was just you having your attention on realities of conception. They were just conceived realities, but now just find the ability of the conceiver. Know the ability of the conceiver. And when you are that fascinated to look at things and you see they are hollow because you're looking into your own eyes, then you will feel a graceful hand on your shoulders and you will look who it is, and it would be the greatest beauty of life. It would be the acknowledgement of your moment with a greater ability to confront the form through a formless sense of awareness and being. And when I say formless, do not get too excited. That is one problem in many ancient tutelages, that it was just an accepted. They accepted the problem. It wasn't needed, but they're like, okay, it's fine. This problem still carries the torch, helps carry the torch. And that is why even seek enlightenment. Why even seek higher senses of freedom and being? Why change? Well, let us think of it this way. If someone comes even to me and tells me, hey man, change everything what you're doing right now, I will be like, who are you? That's it, if I don't know the person, right? But you will see that the greatest change occurs when you are very greatly involved in observing that change. And the reason it's very important to see that there needs to be this profound direction you are to move to is because you are then allowing yourself to find that profundity. Activation means that our sense of observance and awareness becomes a greater communication of reality to the sense that our observance will always be beyond it. And it is. You see, if your self-awareness based on your, let's say, mental imagery and mental circuitry is if you root yourself into the certainty of the temporal world, you cannot be certain because it is changing. So you do not try to seek that other state. You do not try to find heaven on earth as if you're a curious cat. You recognize that you observe that which is here. We do not want to call it heaven, hell, earth, whatever. You can choose the name, but for a second forget the names and look at where you are. Immediately acknowledge that you are here, and if you were to look at things around you, you are right now perceiving the value in them. In other words, these words are meaningful to you because you have some value, some meaning to perceive in them. Aside from that, they're just sound. So now that my communication is coming through, I am communicating from another external cause point that once we observe the effect of everything, we are a cause beyond individual cause. You really need to allow yourself in this life to exist in the most profound and infinite ways. If I could go back to myself years ago and tell myself, hey, stop acting so paralyzed and run comfortably. If I could just say that to myself, I would see that perhaps my utilization of my moments here will be more. But at the same time, there was a beauty in the journey of getting lost. Because that person who got lost saw more things than that person who was always found in the same short routine. You can choose to spend the days of your life here, of your temporal sense of physicality, here doing certain routine action. And it's good, that is a practice, but involve yourself with the life within it. Involve yourself with the life that is around you and that is you, that is through you. You see, the greatest ideas of man have always been ones where it was as if the collective consciousness decided it. So the profundity that many men saw in religious texts when God communicated to man was a sense that God is this presence within everything. So the collective field gave a new sense of individuality to the people. And so in that regard, religion has an attraction of communicating practically with the unknown. And so many people seek it. But if you seek anything with your ideas, those ideas will break simply. You need to be very selfless to have an exploration like the wind that goes everywhere. And selflessness needs to be understood through the compassion of the omnipresence and omniscience of existence, keeping everything. In other words, you will see that when the Dalai Lama says compassion and he smiles, he's smiling to many audiences. He's smiling to those audiences who just, oh, what a good guy, you know? And he's also smiling to those audiences who realize that even Krishnamurti said, be compassion, I'm compassion with its own intelligence. This was the quote of Krishnamurti. And now just simply see how the Dalai Lama's smile was communicating that, my friends, the reason we are compassionate is because we confront all forms of life, all conditions, all circumstances. We see existential suffering and we become the dawn of a new day. We rise and we meet the stars, not in individual forms, lost in stories and stories and stories where the storyteller seems unreachable. No, in breaking the story, in breaking the character, and seeing that the storyteller was never telling a story, but omnisciently looking with the knowing of the cosmos. Ground yourself, discover your roots. And walk with the mightiest sense of self that allows all senses of self to be expressed compassionately and with a purpose that is never enforcing or renouncing, but simply continuing its walk of existence. Let existence continue its walk and appreciate the beauty of the flower that sprouts when it's ready. For the emptiness and the hollowness in your fascination is the beginning to the passage through the light of eternity. Let words be more than words. Let your ideas be more than ideas. And let yourself be more than you believe. Much blessings and namaste.